Thank you very much. So I wanted to provide some background leading to the proposed bills. First is to look at our socio-economic reality for our country. And if the slides come up, you will see the study done by the Bureau of Statistics showing that 133 million of our citizens live in multidimensional poverty. The reason why they live in poverty are 4 dimensions. The first one is they are deprived of education, and this is just basic education, about first 9 years of learning. They are deprived of access to health, including nutrition, food security, and time to health care. They are also deprived of living standards, basic things like safe drinking water. They do not have access to sanitation, as well as water reliability. The 4th dimension of poverty that our people are having to deal with is around underemployment, unemployment, and insecurity. Our economy has not been growing well enough. Over the past 10 years, our growth rate on the average has been under 2%, below our population growth rate. And this means that more people get into poverty every day than the previous day. Our inflation is very high, so is unemployment. Government revenue is very low, and public debt is rising, as well as the cost of servicing the debts. Investment in our country is declining. In the whole of Q2 of 2024, we only attracted about $29 million in foreign direct investment.
Senator Wadada, Senator Pasui, Senator Sani Musa, take your seats.
We have seen a number of companies exit the country. We have seen those that have closed down, and some that have scaled down their operations from having about 5 plants to about 2, including some local companies. On the next slide, we have significant areas of work in progress in reforming our economy and taking Nigeria to a place where we all aspire for the country to be. We also have areas where we are beginning to see positive results. For the areas where we need to make improvements, these include our exchange rates, the strength of the Naira, and the stability of the Naira. We need to rein in on inflation as well as cost of doing business. We need to address rising poverty in the land and the cost of doing business, as well as finding decent jobs for our people, particularly our young population. Our interest rate environment is very high, almost impossible to do any legitimate business, borrowing at 40–50%. We also have challenges around efficient public financial management, coordination of government policies across different levels, as well as public communication. But the areas where we're beginning to see positive results include the balance of trade and current account surplus. We are beginning to see inflation slowing down in developed markets, which means as they cut their rates, more investment will come in our direction. We're seeing a decline in budget deficits. We're seeing rising revenue, though remains small. And we're seeing crude oil local refining in Nigeria, which is good news. And we have our capital markets not doing badly, could be better. And these are some of the context about what led to the reforms. So Mr. President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria set up the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee last year, August. And the team is comprised of over 80 Nigerians from all the 6 geopolitical zones across Nigeria. including over 45 young people from 22 universities, head of internal revenue services, including more than 22 government institutions, including the organized private sector from Manufacturers Association of Nigeria to Small Business Association to Chambers of Commerce, as well as professional bodies, ICANN, ANAN, CITN, Nigerian Bar Association, and so on and so forth. We've done a lot of public consultation in developing the proposals before the National Assembly. These consultations include the private sector, it includes trade associations, it includes the civil society, as well as government. Like I said, we are grateful for the opportunity to have the two-day retreat with the Senate last year. We had one meeting with the Governors Forum, we had two with the National Economic Council. We've had meetings with some of the state governors, individually with their cabinets. We've had meetings with investors community, local and foreign. We had meetings with Nigerians with disability. We had meetings with Nigerians in the diaspora. More than 40 sectors were engaged as part of these proposals. We also conducted requests for submission and surveys, and I'm pleased to inform the Senate that we received submission from all the 36 states in Nigeria. There was no single state that was left out. So we are grateful for the trust that the Nigerian people have in the work of the committee. Some of the findings driving our recommendations today, distinguished senators, is that our budget is very low. It's not enough to fund our development. For the year 2024 that is coming to an end, the total of the budget of the federal government, including the amendment to the Appropriation Act, and all the 36 states of the Federation, comes to about 51.1 trillion naira only. If we convert this to the United States dollars, it is just barely $32 billion. These amounts is the size of the budget of Kenya that has only 54 million people, a lot of poverty in the land as well. This amount is less than 1/4 of the budget of South Africa. 130 billion is their budget, and they have about 60 million people. Even by African standard, we are not doing well. On the next slide, as much as the budget is very low, our revenue is even lower. The entire revenue that we generated from taxes is barely 18 trillion naira in 2023. This amount is not even up to fund half of the budget across the Federation. And if you look at individual tax contributions from personal income tax, for example, in the whole of last year, Nigeria only collected 1.53 trillion naira in personal income tax. In that same year, South Africa collected 50.5 trillion naira equivalent. That is more than 30 times what Nigeria collected. Even Kenya, with 54 million people, collected 5.8 trillion naira, almost 4 times what Nigeria collected. It is instructive to note that in South Africa, you do not pay personal income tax until your income is up to 660,000 naira per month. Below that level, you are totally exempted. In Kenya, you will not be liable to pay personal income tax until you earn more than 282,000 naira per month equivalent. But in Nigeria, you are asked to pay personal income tax once you earn 30,000 naira per month. That's 1,000 naira a day. Nigeria is taxing its poorest people. We are taxing poverty. And it's not showing in our tax collection because in our analysis, we could not find any country in the world where they place so much burden on their poorest and most vulnerable population. That's not where our revenue will come from. The 50 trillion naira equivalent that South Africa collected from personal income tax alone, which, by the way, is more than twice all our revenues combined from taxes as well as from proceeds from oil. These 50 trillion naira that South Africa collected, 90% of it came from the top 5% of their population. So we believe that the time is right for us to provide exemption for our poorest citizens. Given that they live in multidimensional poverty, they have no ability to pay taxes. And to ask some of us who are not so poor to pay a little bit more so that we can reduce the size of budget deficits and not have any need to print money to spend to fund the government. In every country that they have decided to print money to spend, the outcome is predictable. In Zimbabwe, a few years back, there was a 100 trillion Zimbabwe dollar, and I used to have the note, but I didn't bring it here. That note of 100 trillion was barely enough to buy a loaf of bread because they kept printing money. When government cannot raise revenue rightly and they print money to spend, it is effectively taxation without legislation because the value of the money in everybody's pocket reduces proportionately. Unfortunately, this way of imposing taxes without legislation further impose more burden on the lower end of the ladder. And this will promote inequality and further fuel insecurity because of the social tension, hopelessness, and not caring for our people enough. The question we ask ourselves is that if we do not do these reforms now, then when should we do it? If it's not us, then who should do these reforms? On the next slide, we conducted a national study trying to find out from the Nigerian people their perception towards paying taxes, because you know that tax is at the heart of the social contract, is the reason why societies can exist. It turns out that only 17%, 1/7 of Nigerian adults believe that they should pay their taxes and that tax evasion is wrong and punishable. 83% of Nigerian adults will do anything but pay their taxes. This is the lowest that we have seen of any country. So the voice is clear from our people about what we must do. Many of the laws that we have in Nigeria today around taxation, we inherited from our colonial masters. For example, the stamp duty law is a law of 1939. In 1939, the world had not envisaged that there would be the internet. Trying to apply a law of 1939 in 2024 does not show that we are people that are ready for the next generation. Because of this, we decided that instead of amending our old laws that we inherited from the colonial masters, why don't we write new ones for ourselves? And this has been done in many countries across the world. This is what led to us trying to harmonize so many taxes that we have in Nigeria into few high revenue yielding, broad-based taxes, and eliminate those taxes that impose burden on our poorest people and small businesses so they can have the opportunity to thrive. It is when our people are prosperous that they have the ability to pay taxes. Our finding is that the fiscal system we have today inhibits growth. And in my private sector experience before my current role, I was involved for over a decade in looking at tax system in more than 180 countries worldwide. And I can tell you with all sense of responsibility, Nigeria's tax system is one of the most backward in the world. This cannot help us with our ambition of a great country, which is what we desire and truly deserve. We also find that government can do much better in terms of the priority and quality of spending, as well as how we borrow, in addition to issues around harmonization of taxes. On the next slide, I do apologize, you will not be able to read the contents, but it's intentional. We decided to put all the official levies and taxes collectible in Nigeria today, column 1 by the federal government, the one in the middle by the states, the one to the right by the local government, altogether more than 60 taxes and levies that we impose on our people today, yet we have no revenue to show for it. Whereas countries where they collect multiples of what we collect, they collect all those taxes from less than 10 taxes. So we believe that if we continue to do the same thing and expect a different result, the result will not be different. We believe it is time for us to take a step back and say, what taxes should we be collecting today? If you go into the Constitution, you find collection of taxes on wheelbarrow, taxes on bicycle, produce, TV and radio, in the days when those laws were written, having a television is an indication of wealth. Today is not. And we believe it's time for us to do the reforms. So this leads me now to the 4 major bills before you, and I'll give the highlights of those bills one by one. First and foremost, there's a structure that we use to develop the bills. We focus on some principles to guide our recommendations. Those principles include simplicity, harmonization, alignment with our economic objective. We cannot want to grow manufacturing and then we are taxing investment in manufacturing. It's inconsistent. We thought it's important for us to make sure that our tax and fiscal policies are consistent with our growth and development aspirations. Tax neutrality, so that tax does not become a headache for those who are doing business. Competitiveness, can we attract investment to Africa, just within Africa? What we are beginning to see from our analysis, Nigeria's income tax rate for companies ranks in the top 10 in the world. Highest tax rate in the world, Nigeria is in the top 10. Now, if anybody wants to start a business in Africa today under the African Continental Free Trade Area or under the ECOWAS Treaty, the analysis will conclude that Nigeria is the least preferred location for you to set up your investments. If we don't address this issue urgently, the crisis we have will get worse. Because what will happen is even Nigerian companies will decide to go and set up in Ghana and bring the produce to come and sell in Nigeria, since they have a more favorable environment. For example, Nigerian businesses are forced to pay tax even when they have made losses. When you force a company to pay tax when they have made losses, you're asking them to pay tax out of their capital. It's the fastest way to kill any company in the world. One of the reasons why America is one of the greatest countries in the world today is they support their businesses. Even when a business has made a loss, America allows you in some states to go and sell the loss and collect money so you can continue to fund your business. Some of the largest tech companies in the world made losses for more than 10 years before they began to make profits. We want to do the same thing in Nigeria. Today, if you want to set up a factory and you buy equipment and assets, you pay VAT on those assets. You will not be able to get credit for those VAT you have paid. If you go to Ghana, even though their VAT rate is higher, every amount you pay on VAT, you will get it back from the government. We want to do the same thing in Nigeria. We do not want to tax capital anymore. We do not want to tax investments. We do not want to tax poverty. Of course, we do not want to tax seed. We will wait and tax the fruits when people have invested and they are making prosperity. We also want to modernize our system because we are beginning to lose our tax base to other countries. Within the international community, there's a project going on that we call base erosion and profit shifting. And if we don't respond quickly, as other countries are taking care of themselves, we'll be losing our tax base to those other countries. So this is why this is very urgent, among so many other reasons. The work we have proposed before the National Assembly is data-driven. We ensure that we focus on data and we prioritize what is good for our country in the national interest over and above everything else. It is our belief that if Nigeria works, every group, every segment, every association will find a space under a Nigeria that is working. So we have 4 bills. The first one is the Nigeria Tax Bill. The Nigeria Tax Bill brings all the major taxes in Nigeria together in one piece of legislation once it's enacted. It will cover things like companies' income tax, personal income tax, capital gains tax, value-added tax, excise duties tax, stamp duties. The idea is, why do we have to repeat things in different laws? And it's difficult for the taxpayer to find out what they should pay. It's already hard to pay taxes. It should not be harder trying to find out the taxes you need to pay. Our belief is bringing these taxes together in one piece of legislation, write it in simple language that people can understand, will help us significantly. The second bill, before I go into some of the provisions in the bills, is a tax administration bill. This tax administration bill tells us about how to administer our taxes. from issues about taxpayer registration, filing of returns, assessment, payment, tax audits, using technology in revenue administration. All of these are covered under the Tax Administration Bill. Number 3 is the Nigeria Revenue Service Establishment Bill. This bill is seeking to replace the current Federal Inland Revenue Service. One major reason is because the Federal Inland Revenue Service is not the revenue agency of the federal government. So the name that we have for FRS today is inconsistent with its mandate. The taxes that the FRS collects are shared. So we believe that a better name for the FRS will be the Nigeria Revenue Service. But beyond a name change, we also believe that the FRS needs to be able to connect with other agencies of government collecting revenue so that taxpayers will not have the opportunity to explore loopholes because of information asymmetry. For example, if I import goods and I need to pay duties, I have a selfish interest to underdeclare the goods so that I do not pay the right amount of duties. On the other hand, when I'm submitting my returns to the FRS, I have another interest to overstate my expenses so I can reduce my profit and not pay taxes. This is happening in Nigeria today, and sometimes we never find out. If we do, it takes years. We're saying, why can't we connect all the system together? Why can't we even connect the system at the center with the subnational? In the United States of America that we like to refer to for a good federalism or federation, if you file, by the way, in the US, you pay federal income tax and you also pay state income tax. If you file your returns with the federal, it replicates immediately to the states. So by connecting together, we have not in any way compromised our federalism. We have strengthened it because now we have more information accessible to government at all levels to carry out their mandates. The last one is the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill. This bill is trying to replace the current Joint Tax Board to become the Joint Revenue Board. Why is that important? The Joint Tax Board that we have today was envisaged to just only help us with personal income tax matters. But what we now know today is that the issues we are dealing with go beyond personal income tax. In fact, those issues go beyond taxes to broader revenue matters. So therefore, we think that a better name is Joint Revenue Board. In addition to that, we are expanding the scope of that Joint Revenue Board to help us ensure that there's harmonization across Nigeria, to help us ensure that there's collaboration between tax authorities because we are stronger together, to ensure that we can share information, exchange of information, that we can build capacity together, that in fact, it is possible for us to do audits together. Why can't federal and 5 states decide to audit a company at once? Sit down there as a group of people who are working for Nigeria. You reduce the cost of doing audits, both for the government as well as for the taxpayer. Another thing that we have in this 4th bill is the Tax Appeal Tribunal. This Tax Appeal Tribunal today is established under the Federal Inland Revenue Service Establishment Act. And that gives the impression that the Tax Appeal Tribunal is only a federal matter. We leave out our taxpayers whenever they have disputes with states and with local government. We believe that it's better to set up this tribunal in a way that it can deal with all tax disputes across Nigeria, and therefore is appropriate to set up this body under the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill. The third very important element of this 4th bill is the setting up of the Tax Ombudsman Office. Today in Nigeria, over 30 million small businesses do not understand the taxes they need to pay because they don't need to be finance experts before they can do their small business. They do not have the resources and the means to hire accountants and lawyers or tax consultants. Therefore, when they are faced with tax assessment from the tax authorities, they are left out in the cold. They have only 2 options. One option is to fight, a fight that they can never win. The second one is to negotiate. And sometimes when they negotiate, they are made to pay taxes under the table. They are meant to pay more than they're supposed to pay. There's nobody to protect them. We believe that setting up the Office of the Tax Ombudsman we provide the opportunity for us to protect our taxpayers, particularly small businesses and vulnerable taxpayers. As a result of following what I've just given as overview of all the 4 bills, I will quickly go to each of them without wasting your time, because I do understand how precious your time is, and we remain very grateful for this opportunity. The first and the major bill is the Nigeria tax bill. By the way, these bills have more than 200 proposals trying to reform different aspects of our tax system and our economy, so that Nigeria can begin the journey towards greatness that we believe that every Nigerian truly deserves. So this Nigerian tax bill is the major bill of the 4 that has all the major taxes in Nigeria. It has 9 chapters and it has schedules. So I will take some of the important provisions of this bill very quickly. The first one is to eliminate the minimum tax that we impose on companies when they have made losses. This is not right, and we cannot continue to do that to our businesses. The other thing is that because globally every country is trying to protect their base, we are proposing in the bills before you a 15% effective tax rate on profit. This time around is on profit, so we cannot be said to be taxing capital. And this is what many countries in the world are currently doing. If any company is able to find their ways, muzzle their ways to get laws passed in their favor or policies in their favor, and they pay almost next to nothing in taxes, and it's a big company with turnover of at least 20 billion naira in a year, or a multinational, they will be asked to pay at least 15% of their profit to the government, so that they do not extract all the profit from Nigeria without paying their fair share. The second one is, today, we have a lot of our young people with knowledge in technology, and we speak good English more than many countries around the world. But Nigeria can barely boast of up to $100 million a year that our people earn by working remotely for multinationals across the world. In the Philippines, in 2023, they earn $35 billion from this. India is the leader in the world. They made over $200 billion. Nigeria did not even make $100 million. When we looked at it, it turns out that the major impediment why multinational companies and international companies will not hire Nigerians to work for them is down to our tax laws and regulations. One of it is that if you hire a Nigerian, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, whether you have been to Nigeria or not, that individual will pay tax, which is okay. But even you that hire them, you must come to Nigeria and pay tax. So those companies are going to be asking them, what's so special about the Nigerians when I can hire Kenyans, South Africans, Filipinos, and Indians? So we thought it's important to address this problem so that we can get jobs for our young people. Imagine that today we have just 1 million Nigerians working remotely in the international value chain, earning just $1,000 per month. Those people will not only get themselves out of poverty, they will lift their families out of poverty. It will bring foreign exchange to Nigeria that will help us strengthen the naira, and government will collect taxes from those income that they earn. Whichever way you look at it, it's a win-win for our economy and our people, particularly our young people. Another very important proposal is that VAT today is charged on investments, VAT is charged on capital, and VAT is charged on basic consumption. We believe that we should allow businesses to operate with minimal costs, because if we reduce the cost of doing business, we have more businesses. When we have more businesses, we create more employment. When you create more employment, you reduce poverty. And by the way, those people will pay personal income tax, they will consume and pay VAT. So whatever we are losing by way of tax, if anything, will make multiples of those from the economic activities that will be generated. We are proposing that companies will be allowed to claim input credit for any amount they spend on VAT for their investments and capital. We are also proposing that the company's income tax rate in Nigeria be reduced from 30% to 25% over the next 2 years. Like I said before, we currently rank top 10 highest tax burden for companies in the world. The logic for many countries is to bring down company income tax rate to be very low to attract investment. And when you do come, they now collect personal income tax from your staff, they collect VAT, and that works. In the OECD, the average income tax rate, company income tax rate, is even under 20%. So we need to do the same thing for our country. We also, like I showed you earlier on, we have more than 60 official taxes and levies. Unofficially, those taxes and levies are more than 200. We believe it's time to address that problem. One of the ways we are proposing to address that problem is we have too many earmarked taxes. We have taxes for education, we have taxes for engineering and science, we have another tax for information technology, we have for police, and it's a long list. Normally, when companies pay their income tax, people pay VAT, individuals pay personal income tax, stamp duties. It is for government to try and prioritize how they spend the money. It is not right to then introduce new taxes for every area we want to develop. At the end of the 9th National Assembly, one of the exercises we did was we went through all the bills that were not concluded at the end of the 9th National Assembly. There were over 250. We found 40 bills with levies and taxes here and there that have not been passed. This is a real danger to our economy because once we keep passing these taxes and the amount of tax you need to pay exceed 100%, nobody doing legitimate business will continue anymore. We would only have criminals doing business because they will just ignore the taxes you ask them to pay. They won't pay anyway, and when the auditors show up, they'll settle themselves. We don't want to build a country that reward criminality and punish people who want to do the right thing. We also believe that, and in that regard, we are proposing a single tax that we call development levy of 4%. Once a company has paid that amount, let it be shared to the agency that we believe, based on the National Assembly's approval, should benefit. And that over time, those agencies should present their budget to the National Assembly for appropriation. Let companies and businesses just pay the major taxes. Let government decide how to spend the money. We also believe that we should review incentives because we've seen a lot of abuse. We lose trillions of naira, and the National Assembly has raised these issues many times. We lose a lot of money to abusive incentives, to subjective incentives that are not available to everyone. Apart from the money that we lose, we also create distortion in the economy such that if I have access and I can get those incentives, I can outprice the other person who does not have access if I don't like their face. This, again, we believe is a matter we must correct. Another proposal we have in this bill is the fact that we want Nigerian companies to become multinationals so that we stop panicking every time that there's a problem with price of oil or volume. We believe that we can have multinationals in Nigeria today that will bring billions of dollars back from the money they earn globally. But our framework in Nigeria today does not encourage that. It's almost impossible. One of the proposals we have in the bill before you is to allow Nigerian companies that have operations abroad to get unilateral tax relief if they earn income abroad and they pay tax on it, and they are bringing it back to Nigeria and there's another tax on it. We should give them credit for the tax that they have paid abroad. This is what countries that want to attract headquarters companies to their jurisdiction. This is one of the things they have to do, and I believe that Nigeria is ripe to be that center, that destination, that choice location in Africa, first and foremost, for investment. If any company wants to invest in Africa, they will normally think about Nigeria first. While I was in the private sector, I advised many multinationals, local companies, and small businesses. 9 out of 10 times, when they ask questions about, I've also answered questions about a company that wants to set up car manufacturing, one of the largest in the world, that eventually went to another country. When they ask you the basic questions and you answer them, they usually don't come back, and it's because the numbers don't add up. So beyond our aspiration to be a great country, beyond the population that we have, we must have the right framework and environment that is conducive for investment. Another proposal we have is that we looked at what Nigerians consume. You know, the multidimensional poverty index that we started with. We said health, food, we said education, we said living standard. It turns out that most of these consumption that people need for survival carry tax in Nigeria today, VAT. We believe that it is time for us to remove VAT from this essential consumption. Nobody should have to think about making a choice between eating bread or gari because of the VAT. So our proposal is that food should no longer carry VAT. Our proposal is that education should not carry VAT, whether it's hidden or revealed VAT. Our proposal is that education and health should not carry VAT. Transportation, of course, if you hire a car, you know, you pay the VAT. But if you enter public transportation, you should not have to pay VAT because you need that for your survival, going back and forth. The same thing with accommodation. Let people be able to put the roof over their head. So when we looked at the Consumer Purchasing Index by the Bureau of Statistics, all the consumption in Nigeria are classified into 12 categories. These very essential consumptions, they constitute 82% of where our people spend their money, particularly the low-income earners. We have proposed in the bill before you to remove the VAT on these essential items. In other words, 4 out of every 5 consumption by the masses will no longer carry VAT. Only 1 will carry VAT. And that one that is carrying VAT is not the most basic things, which means people at the high income end are the ones who tend to spend a lot of money on those things. While we are not saying they should not spend money to enjoy their lives, we're saying they should please give us a little for us to fund government. Then, we also believe that we should allow businesses to restructure their organization. So there are people who start businesses accidentally. They cannot find a job, they start selling something before they know it. Before you know it, you have 5 companies and they're operating inefficiently. What you see everywhere in the world is, at a point, you reorganize your business to become efficient. Today, our tax laws come in the way of you restructuring your business to be efficient. It's almost like a crime for you to want to restructure your businesses to be efficient. We believe we must address that. Allow businesses to operate efficiently. The more efficient they are, the more value they can create. The more value they create, the more taxes they can pay to the government. And last but not the least of the important highlight on this Nigerian tax bill is that our small businesses are overburdened with taxes. They have to do PAYE, they have to do VAT, they have to do withholding tax, companies income tax, and endless amount of levies and charges, particularly at the local government level. We believe that it is time for us to create a threshold that is high enough to protect these small businesses. Our proposal before the National Assembly is that any business that earns 50 million naira a year or less should not be asked to carry the burden of taxes here and there. Because our data shows that out of the informal sector and small businesses, SMEs, only about 3% of them are capable of carrying the tax burden. And this 3%, if we do it well, is in fact more than the number of people that are active in the tax system today. In other words, we are attempting to tax everyone, yet we are not making progress. What other countries do is to target their top end who have the ability to pay, put all your effort on them, and you begin to see the result that is transformational in terms of your revenue. So we also have this proposal before you to protect our small businesses. On the next slide is the analysis I just spoke to in terms of how we identify the essential consumption by the Nigerian people. For example, the average household in Nigeria today spend 52% of their income just to eat. The lower you go down the ladder, the higher that percentage is. So we do not think that anybody should have to suffer hunger because of taxes. So I'll leave that slide and speak to an issue that has been very, very hotly debated since these bills have been presented to the National Assembly. And that is to do with the revenue sharing formula for VAT. And if you permit me, I'll spend a minute or two just to give some background. In 1986, the military introduced the sales tax decree, and it was collected by states across Nigeria. 5 years, they did not make progress. In 1991, the military set up a committee and asked the committee, help us look at why is this sales tax not working? Should we be considering value-added tax? Because at that time, more than 100 countries in the world had introduced VAT, and they were very successful. So this committee came up with a finding and advised the government that VAT is a better tax than sales tax. Sales tax creates what we call cascading effect. Every stage that you go through in producing, the sales tax will pile up, so that when you are done, the end product is too expensive. So VAT is a better tax. But the committee advised that if you must implement VAT, it should be implemented centrally, but the money should be shared to the sub-national, with federal keeping the cost of managing that tax. In 1993, the military introduced the value-added tax decree, and in 1994, the implementation commenced. By 1999, when we got into the Fourth Republic, we needed a constitution. If you read the constitution of 1999 and 1979, they have a lot of similarities. We believe that the 1999 constitution, because it was fashioned after the 1979 constitution, they did not remember to put VAT in the 1999 constitution, because in 1979 there was no VAT. Because VAT has not been mentioned specifically in the 1999 constitution, and we have seen judgment even as recent as last week about gaming lottery that says it has to be House of Assembly of the States. Before then, we had one on hospitality and tourism. It also said, the Supreme Court said, it is the states. That is why Rivers State went to court. Lagos State has been to court on VAT, and they have won that VAT should be tax of the state. But the final appeal is at the Supreme Court. A final determination has not been made. We see danger that if we wait for the court to tell us the answer to this problem, that answer will create chaos for us. Number one, every state will collect less than half of what they are getting now. Number two, businesses will struggle because you bought something in Kaduna and you are selling it in Ekiti. They will not allow you for the input. And the more the cost piles up, the more businesses will struggle. In addition to that, in the US today, United States of America, they do sales tax and it's collected by states. But the state cannot collect sales tax on imports or international services, because that is the exclusive preserve of the federal government. If states should begin to collect VAT today, they will not be able to collect import VAT. Import VAT and international VAT is about half the VAT we collect in Nigeria today. If anybody will benefit at all, it will be the federal government. We believe that the right solution is for us to address the concerns that those states have, so that we can have a political solution to this problem rather than the one that says, let's wait for the Supreme Court. Therefore, we looked at the current formula for sharing VAT, and it says, federal government should take 15%, the state should take 50%, and local government should take 35%. That is the vertical distribution. But amongst the states, which is the horizontal distribution, it says at least 20% of the VAT revenue should be on derivation. The derivation for VAT is not the same thing as derivation for oil and gas. Every single state in Nigeria has derivation of VAT. When a state awards contract for their infrastructure, there's VAT, that's derivation. When any business there invoices for goods, that's derivation. But that derivation today is lopsided in favor of Lagos State, because Lagos State is where the head offices of major companies in Nigeria are located. Today, VAT is attributed to the state where the VAT is paid to the government. For example, the largest VAT payer in Nigeria is MTN, followed by Dangote. when MTN remit VAT in Lagos, they are remitting VAT on all the calls that are made in Nigeria. Why is that credit given to only Lagos State? We believe that's lopsided. If Dangote sends cement across Nigeria to their distributors, Dangote's head office is in Lagos, they will pay the VAT in Lagos. All the VAT on Dangote cement, Bua cement, Lafarge cement are credited to Lagos. We said number one problem we must solve is to correct this lopsidedness of how VAT is attributed to states. Our proposal before you is that going forward, if we have your approval for the bills, every state will receive credit for the consumption within their territory. MTN will tell us these are the states where they made calls, and they can tell us from their masts. They have equipment. If I call here now, the call cannot go through until it connects. So they know where I am and making a call. When Dangote does not sell one bag cement to retailers, they send it to their distributors. Their distributors have addresses that can be tracked to states. So Dangote can tell you, I've sold 10 million cement of bag of cement, and I sold 1 million in Kaduna, 10,000 in Ekiti. They can give you that information. So every state will get credit for the economic activities within their jurisdiction. We believe that once that correction has been done, we should then allow states to keep more of the economic activities that they have generated within their jurisdiction. One, because it is fair to do so. Number two, to discourage any state from going to the Supreme Court to get a judgment that they want to administer VAT on their own, which is not what we want. So this is the summary of the proposal we have that is creating a lot of debate, but we do appreciate those debates, but we believe and we appreciate and we are grateful for this opportunity to explain the reason for our proposal to the Nigerian people and, of course, to this distinguished Senate. I will take a few of the other important provisions in those bills that I haven't explained. One of it is personal income tax. One of it is personal income tax. And like I said in my opening remarks, today we are taxing people that earn 30,000 naira a month. That's 1,000 naira a day. How can anybody survive earning 30,000 naira a month? Even if they live alone, they will do transport, they will buy food, they will pay rent, they will pay electricity. They cannot survive. So we are proposing in the bill before you that anybody earning 800,000 naira per annum, including an extra 200,000 for rent, about 1 million a year, should not pay personal income tax. By the way, this threshold is not even the highest in Africa. It's still lower than many smaller African countries. But it's a good start for us to show that we are considerate of our poorest people. In addition to that, people who earn about 1 million, 1.5 million naira a month, and less than that, will see a reduction in their personal income tax bill, because it's hard for everybody. We need to protect even the low middle income earners. These proposals, if approved by the Senate, will reduce the tax on 90% of our workers, both in the private and the public sector. And it will exempt more than 30% of our citizens who earn about minimum wage, around 50, 60, 70,000 naira. Then the remaining 10% who are not so poor will now pay a little bit more. The top rate today is 24% in the law, and we are proposing it goes to 25%. We're doing some other reforms around allowances and relief. So effectively, if somebody earns 100 million naira a month, clearly not a poor person, the maximum they will pay even under our proposal is only 25%. If they were in South Africa, they will be paying 41%. If they were in Kenya, they will pay 35%. Of course, if they are in the UK or the US, they will be close to 40%. But we're doing only 25%. One other reason why we believe it's important to adjust that rate for high net worth individuals is to encourage formalization. Today, distinguished senators, if I'm doing a business and I call it Taiwo Enterprises, I did not register with CAC, and I'm honest to pay my taxes, the maximum personal income tax I will pay is 19%. if I make a mistake to register that as a company the following day, from next year, my company income tax is more than 40%. We are trying to correct this so that businesses will be encouraged to formalize their businesses. When they formalize their businesses, they open the door for growth. And then, because they grow, they pay taxes. I will move on to the second bill. The second bill is the Nigeria Tax Administration Bill. This is the bill that is seeking to set up a minimum standard for how we administer taxes across Nigeria, including harmonization of our tax identity. Today, someone like me can have about 3 IDs in Nigeria. So,
please, can we listen to him in silence, please?
Senator Malamodori.
Okay, I'll round up now. Yes.
Senator Malamodori, please take your seat.
So for someone like me, I reside in Lagos, but I do most of my work.
Take your seat.
I do most of my work in the FCT, and I also have a number with Joint Tax Board. I have like 3 identities. So we're saying let's harmonize it. Let Nigerians have just one identity.
Wait. Please, can we listen in silence, please? Everybody's interested in what he's saying. You can see people at the gallery. The gallery is full. Nigerians want to listen to him, want to hear what is happening, want to have a knowledge of what is going on here. Please, let's listen to him in silence.
Yes, I'm almost done, maybe about 10 minutes, Mr. President. So we also, as part of this proposal for the Nigerian Tax Administration Bill, we are proposing that we use technology to administer taxes in a way that is efficient and to be able to connect intelligence across Nigeria so that if there's anyone who is evading taxes, we can find out. And if there's anyone who is too poor to pay tax, we can exempt them. We also have provisions for exchange of information between and among tax authorities. We have proposals for tax refunds. So if companies have overpaid their taxes, we should allow them to get a refund so that they do not have to borrow at 30-40% to pay government instead of doing their businesses. The third bill is the Nigerian Revenue Service Establishment Bill. This bill, as I explained earlier on, is trying to make the FRS play its proper role as the revenue agency of the federation that collects money for the federation, and to then connect with other agencies as well as sub-national in terms of tax intelligence, use of technology, capacity building, and collaboration and exchange of information. The last bill is the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Bill. I already explained this bill. It's trying to reform the Joint Tax Board to play a bigger role. It's trying to set up the Tax Appeal Tribunal in a way that it can handle tax disputes across Nigeria. Of course, taxpayers have the right to appeal to the court if they are not happy with the decision of the Tax Appeal Tribunal, which the National Assembly has set up but under a different framework. And the last one is a tax ombudsman to protect our small businesses and vulnerable taxpayers. So I will conclude on the next slide. Our belief is that revenue is only a means to an end. It is not an end in itself. And our policies, tax, fiscal policy, monetary policy, must facilitate sustainable growth and development for shared prosperity, which means that our economy must be organized in a way that is conducive and investment friendly. Our fiscal and tax policies must be purposeful and coherent, easy to understand and administer. Our laws must be enabling of businesses and dynamic, and governance must be simple and efficient. I'll conclude with our prayers to the distinguished Senate and the National Assembly. Our prayer is that our distinguished senators will go through these bills and help us consider them based on their merits and based on national interest in the light of the challenges that we face today. We stand ready at any time that we are given the opportunity to come and explain, to be able to do so, even to committees or any groups, as the Senate may so desire. We pray before the Senate that these proposals be favorably considered Like I said, there are over 200 proposals trying to reform different areas of our tax system and the economy. We thank you very much for this opportunity today. We do not take it for granted. And once again, Mr. President and distinguished senators, thank you very much for the opportunity, and may God bless you.